we're in the overnight right now. The market is shifting and changing. Does anyone here remember when we used to roast writing on pen and paper? First time I ever roasted coffee was pen and paper. We've got a couple still left in here. You made it, aged yourself there, Simon. Anyone else remember when we were manual tamping? And now everyone's automatic tamping. And it feels like it was overnight that these things changed. We are in the overnight right now. The coffee supply chain is changing and adapting, and the way that we have to manage and kind of track our coffee is changing. It can be scary. I think everyone here who buys or sells green coffee has felt that fear at some point in the last 2 years, looking at the market, looking at the access to product. We're in a new normal. We're seeing market volatility in a much more consistent way. What have we learned from this? How did we get here? And then what are some things that we can do to move forward? What are some best practices? So we're seeing consistently sitting above 250 for quite a few months now. We've seen this year that the C market price has increased by just over like 36% in 2024. So from an already high base to where we are now. We have also seen the AUD per kilo price, which we provide a live converter for, sitting above the $8 mark for kind of majority of this year, which is pretty wild. I remember back in my day building blends for less than $8, and now we're having a base commodity price sitting above that. So the challenges are real, the things we need to be aware of and planning are real. So I'd love to know, potentially from our trader end of the panel to start, guys, what are some of the biggest drivers that you've seen recently that are affecting or contributing to the market volatility and the kind of new status quo that a lot of buyers and traders like yourselves are having to deal with?
The big one is weather in Brazil, I think.
Yeah.
There's a few drivers, but the talk of the town has been weather in Brazil. I think initially in the kind of winter months, June, July, was speculation around frost. Parts of Brazil that didn't receive rain for, I think, 167 days. Yeah, that's caused speculation around the forecasting and balance sheets of Arabica, obviously. Yes, we've seen some rain over the last couple of weeks. That's sort of, we had like a 10-cent spike just on Friday because we saw a bit of some photos of some rain and whatnot. But yeah, but then, that's still speculation, right? So I think we're still going to see volatility until end of the year, until we really see the true result. We're sort of kind of thinking there's going to be a 2 million bag deficit as a result. Obviously, it's too early to tell, but I think the damage is still already done, and the extent of it will be determined over the next few months. Yeah. The other drivers probably, I think it's going to be a big deficit in Robusta. So demand shift from Robusta to Arabica. So that's put further pressure on the C market. At least in my time on the ground, I've never seen a shift that big. So yeah, it's sort of a combination of a lot of bad things at once, right? Like we've also seen record lows of certified stocks in big exchange warehouses at the same time as Robusta deficits, bad weather in Brazil. So it's sort of been a tumultuous couple of years, and then you got that whole EUDR, Robusta deficits, Brazil weather, EUDR pressures, and low certified stocks.
Yeah, amazing.
It's been the main things. Macroeconomics if you want to get into, or deep stuff, with what's going on and whatnot, but I would say they're the main drivers there.
Maybe as a little summary on that point that I'd like to touch on is, we see kind of global economic challenges in the space as well. We've seen ports being shut in Ethiopia because of unrest and challenges of actual shipping. And that's not just ports for coffee, it just happens to be where our coffee's leaving as well. So those challenges, as well as we've seen strikes in North America, and we start to see the connectivity of our supply chain. We're on a little island down the bottom of the world, but we are affected by these challenges. When we see these strikes, even though they were short-term strike out of the Ethiopian port that had to close, that wasn't a strike, but the strike that happened in North America, that does have roll-on effects to our market that we have to be aware of. And as kind of touched on by the team, these things are systematic. They happen in our supply chain. There are spikes, there are these events, but we are at a very unique time where we're having multiple happen all at once. We're having supply chain, actual access to product and movement of product around the world challenges. We're having environmental challenges from both of our 2 largest producing countries in the world. Even if no one in the room buys Robusta, I used to buy lots of Robusta, I loved it. Even if you're not buying Robusta, it is affecting your Arabica that you're purchasing, and we need to be aware of that. So it's the combination of those 2 weather events, the global kind of civil unrest that's causing as well, the shipping unrest, and then we're coming off the back of a pandemic where we couldn't even move product at the time. So we're seeing global spot levels and spot coffee levels at record lows. So these safety nets that we had as green coffee buyers, and I speak about it from my own perspective previously as a green coffee buyer as well, they're not there anymore. So we have to plan, we have to be ready for these things, we have to be aware of it. I think the unique opportunity for tonight is Sometimes in our industry, we have individual conversations. We talk to our supplier, we talk to our roaster, we talk to our customer, and we sometimes think, is this a singular conversation or is this actually a big thing that everyone needs to be aware of? We've got different companies representing different businesses, different aspects of our industry. It is a challenge, and we have to be aware of these changes that are at foot. We touched on EUDR. Anyone who knows me knows I can talk about that for a while. We did just get the announcement of a delay on the EUDR. It's the European Deforestation Regulation. So, high level, no coffee that gets imported to Europe after these regulations are put in can be directly attributing to deforestation. What that means is the importers of that coffee need to be able to certify it. It's a little bit unclear about how to certify. They have announced the delay, but the risk of this delay is how is this time going to get used to actually meet these requirements. So there is a risk that this is going to delay and actually increase volatility in that time as well. We just have to be aware of these things. We have to be aware that, a week's rain in Brazil doesn't solve everything. A week's rain in Brazil will allow us to potentially start seeing flowers, but we will still see potential deficits out of Brazil again. So it feels doom and gloom, but we just need to be aware. We can't have our heads in the sand. We need to be up. We need to be looking at these things. And it's never too late as a coffee roaster, as a buyer, to start planning, managing, and tracking your coffee. It's never too late. No matter how big or small of a company you are, you can always take control of it and start to get on top of it. I'd love to know from yourself, Jack or Ben, a little bit about maybe how your roles change or how you've had to adapt a little bit in your role with this volatility and with the kind of fluctuations that are happening in the market.
As a group, we have a few different arms for where coffee goes. We have the Veneziano brand here, we have black bag roasters. There's a lot of coffee moving around the building. And I think the roles changed as far as not just a sourcing, go find coffee, buy coffee, that sort of thing. There's a lot more education taking place with our customer base as to, you've all touched on it. What are our indicators? What are we looking at? What is the market level? Why is that getting driven this way? Why are we looking at Robusta all of a sudden when we don't even buy Robusta? These are all the things we're starting to talk about with our customers as to what is impacting their final roasted coffee price, quality, availability, that sort of thing. Because I guess the last 5 years of my role has been setting up that supply chain, and now it's been, how do I talk about that supply chain with our customers?
Yeah.
I think the biggest change for us as a roaster in the last 2 years has really just been paying attention to what the market's doing. We've never paid attention more. It's always been like, oh yeah, we've got an idea, we're looking at trends, but now, I don't know about you guys, I love Caleb's updates. We are actually, I think, probably one of the early adopters to Greensquare. That's been really, really beneficial, just from a relationship perspective. But from I think what's really changed for us is just even talking to our suppliers a lot more. They're communicating with us a lot more. And so we do lean on them more than we ever have, in terms of them going, hey, now's a really good time to lock in for X amount of time. I think we've been projecting well for probably the last 5 or 6 years, but now it's like, instead of it being like, oh, it's a good thing to do, I think it's like an absolutely non-negotiable thing to do.
Yeah.
Like if you want access to the right coffee at the right price.
I think part of that is getting a little bit of awareness of it, right? You don't have to drive right into all of the intricacies of the macroeconomics like Kyle was talking about, but what are my indicators and what do I do if they change?
I think just a summary of that, I think you guys touched on it perfectly there around it's about planning. So planning was something that was required before to know that we're going to get coffee and things like that. We had a lot of windows on either side of our planning to maybe wait a little bit to buy, wait a little bit to kind of move some stock or do things like that. Those safety nets are shrinking rapidly, so the timelines of our planning have to be really accurate now. We have to be aware. So, roasters have always been planning, but now we don't have that luxury of time to kind of manipulate while we're doing our planning as well. So I think that's a really good thing that we were able to touch on there. We understand there's been an asymmetry about understanding of coffee, and it's not through anyone's wrongdoing or anyone's misalignment, it's just through the nature of where the market has been. There's been the asymmetry that traders and importers are built to trade and manage and track coffee. And roasters have, for a long time, been able to kind of not had to worry because our safety nets have been there for so long. When the market gets really challenging in these times, and it won't be forever, we then realise, okay, we have to take some accountability and kind of start to track and be aware of these things. So it is a change, it is scary. I think that's a real thing, and like being open to say it is scary. Like it is challenging. But being able to know that you're not alone, there is a spot here, and without planning, we run the risk of like jeopardizing our quality of product, our quantity of product, and our availability to our customers as a roaster. So it's crucial that we start to plan, no matter the size of roastery, we start to plan, we start to get on top of those things. So it'd be interesting to hear from a trader's perspective how your role or how you're handling and the movement of your product and the contracts that you're booking or the product you're moving into country has changed or adapted over the last 2 years.
ICT is a very young business in terms of the way that it operates, so we're still finding our way through it a little bit. But the analogy that I make is, you know, ships are safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships are built for. So the thing is, you need a good crew, and your good crew is not built in fair weather. Your crew is built in the storms. That's what we're navigating right now. We have to be honest about that. Everyone is navigating storms of some sort, whether it's small traders like us, large traders like Sucafina, you know, we're all facing challenges that we've never seen before. We're going through this period of a little bit of turmoil. There's going to be some pain for us, for our clients, on everyone's part. And the way that we navigate this together is how we're going to come out on the other side. So that's how we're addressing it. We're really looking at it that the next 6 to 12 months are going to be difficult.
I think I can mirror a lot of what Ray said. I think relationships become the most important thing in sort of volatile, sort of challenging times, right? I mean, across the whole supply chain. I think the biggest thing that's changed, maybe not innately changed, I think we've always had to be vigilant, adaptive to the market, but I think it's sort of, the risk has increased now, I think. The market volatility, holding spot stock, knowing when to buy. Default risk, I think, is a huge thing as well. I think a lot of roasters maybe don't understand on our side. We're exposed to default on the roaster side as well as producer side. The more volatile the market, the higher risk for default. So I think from a risk management standpoint, there's a lot more for us to manage these days than maybe, in times before.
We've given a bit of an answer to that question, but I'd love to know what's, from a roaster or green bean buyer's perspective, what do you expect from us in return?
It'd be great. Do one of you guys want to jump on that first?
I think he does.
Hey Carl, you got any spot coffee? Look, I mean, that's been the biggest shift mentally, I think, across the whole industry, right? Like you were talking about, the safety nets aren't there anymore. So being able to be open in those conversations as to where we're at and as upfront, and if you're not planning, at least help you plan for us. So yeah, I think that you're right. It's the relationship side of things, so that we know, at least understand where we're going to have gaps, so that we can work through them and that sort of thing. It's relationships.
It's now more than ever relationships between roasters and suppliers. It's never been more important. And so to answer your question to that, good, clear communication is welcomed and probably needed with a lot of us neurodiverse roasters that are floating around, trying to plan. You know, sometimes it's hard to plan the next week, just with your schedule, let alone, you know, thinking 6, 12 months in advance. So anyway, that's something that I've loved. You know, the last couple of years there has actually been more communication, and I've welcomed that. You know, as a roaster.
Thanks for that, guys. I think it's great. Thanks for kind of addressing that there, Raihaan. It's important to hear it from both sides as well. I think, personally, I would like to touch on one thing there, particularly. It hasn't probably been top of the conversation for a little while, but there was a lot of talk for a long time about direct trade. Let's cut out the traders. Let's cut out the middlemen. I can't look at them when I say that, because I'll get the evil eyes. But this is something that myself and my company wholeheartedly stand behind, that right now every single roaster in the world is realizing how important those relationships are and how important it is for those traders. We can do direct trade, and I know that Jack and the team here do direct trade in amazing partnerships with importers like Sucafina to be able to facilitate that. Direct trade does not mean removing a stakeholder. It means working with a stakeholder and enabling that connection to origin, but also that facilitation. So this is a big learning that we've had to find out in this time, and I think a lot of people potentially were misunderstanding what that means and how it works, but hands down the best way we've ever seen direct trade is working with good partners to allow you to facilitate that trade. So it's a little bit challenging to hear sometimes, or it's a little bit challenging to kind of know about, but it's important to understand that direct trade does not mean we cut these guys out. It means we work with them And I will not find me a trader who says they don't want to do that. They want to do that with you. They want to work with you. They want to build that connection, that longevity of purchasing. There is no benefit for producers, and that's what these guys and these traders are here for, is to support their producers. There is no benefit from you chopping and changing every year. There is benefit from you creating these long-term relationships and having these guys facilitate it. The ability for a roaster to facilitate their entire procurement is an entirely different business, and then you're worried about managing the financial risk of all of that, which these guys have to worry about, and I'm very happy not to worry about that. And I think it's important that roasters don't over-complicate their business by thinking it's overly simple. So we're not at risk of that now, because everyone knows how hard it is right now, but there was a big rhetoric. We had a very settled 10 years, and it's in that time where people start to go, maybe we don't need them. They're crucial. So they don't pay me to say that, I swear, but I do wholeheartedly believe it. Oh, we got a man?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a, not a bugbear for me, but it's something that I've been, as a buyer, trying to I guess, challenge over the last 5 to 10 years to that term. And I think a lot of the guys here hate me for it. It's like, don't call it direct trade. What I've been trying to promote is relationship coffee.
Yeah.
Because there's no, somebody in the supply chain is not a bad thing, as long as they're adding value. So I know that Sucafina, ICT, all of these guys can add value with all the things. So I'm not on the ground, I'm not cupping lots every single day. Sure, I travel, but every day doing all the quality control, the stuff that actually leaves the country, it's not me, it's these guys.
Yeah.
So being able to tap into those networks is a huge positive.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jack. I think the challenge comes down to the language we use in our industry. There's words that can get misused over time, and they don't get addressed unless we have the opportunity to just talk about it and be aware of it. No one does it unintentionally, no one does it intentionally. It's kind of a subjective thing. Like, even the word specialty can kind of get misused, or everyone has a different dimension of that.
Here's another
I won't hand the mic back for that one.
That's a hot topic. Here we go.
But it's the same with the direct trade. It's about really understanding that the longevity of these connections are what is going to be kind of sustainable for our supply chain. So we just touched on then, I'm going to have to circle to my book, I got distracted then. All that talk of specialty. Alrighty, so I want to jump now, very seamlessly, didn't check my book. I'd like to transition to talk a little bit about some best practices moving forward. So things are very temperamental. Do we see much of an end? I'd love to know from everyone's perspective how far they're planning. No one has the magic ball, so no one's going to answer it and say, hey, it's next week on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, the market's going to drop, everyone get on. Let's all see next week at 3 o'clock if it happened. Last time I did this, I did it on... I might get done for that. I did it once on social media, and literally the next week we had a 4-cent drop in a day, and I was like, I've done it, I've figured it out.
Roasters a question.
I'll even give you the mic.
Consumer pricing.
There we go.
Good question. You wanted to ask? You wanted to say, didn't you? I paid $17 for a toasted sandwich in Fitzroy. Okay, and then I went and got a coffee for $3. So what's the go? Do we need? We did 5 years ago at GoldenBean. We knew we had to put pricing up, but we had saturation of cafes. We had saturation. You could get coffee anywhere, good espresso coffee anywhere. Yeah. So as a roaster, is it our role to get together as a group and put those prices up where they should be? I paid £5 for a coffee in Starbucks in London. £5. That's $10. Yeah. So let's throw it back at the roasters and see what their solution is on that.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to want to talk on this one now. We're done.
Take a seat, everyone.
Yeah, let's just sit down. We'll dim the lights again. It's going to be a long one. I will hand it over. I will definitely hand it over. I think that's an important conversation around the commercials of it. So we're going to be paying more now. We have to understand what's that value proposition, how is that communicated through to our suppliers. We have a unique situation from my perspective in Australia, and this will probably lead into you guys talking about this a little bit more. There has been a, let's call it subconscious race to the bottom. We've had an oversaturated market because we've built a market on a very low price, and we've overly saturated our market in doing that. Yeah. And now we're feeling the effects of that when the price increases and it gets quite challenging. So it's that oversaturation that we have to be aware of that is happening. And we have to find that value proposition to our consumers, because I know every single person in this room is sick of mainstream media posting about how bad it is about a flat white, how bad it is about this. Like, we're the crux of that. Like, we're a focal point. There's a lot of focal points. We're a focal point of the recession that we're in, and in the cost of living crisis we're in, is all referenced off a latte.
Yeah,
The price of a flat white is the crux of that. So it is an important conversation to have, and I'm very thankful for you to add that question in, Sean. I'm excited to hear how you guys are handling it, how you're communicating with your customers, and how you see us moving forward with a kind of price communication. Benny's up.
Yeah,
I'll take this one. You know, I'll just start with just a statement that I'm not sure if you guys agree with or not, but I think as an industry we need advocates. You know, at Ray, Phil DeBella gets up and he's advocating for us. That's fantastic, but we need more people doing it. There's been a couple of guys down here, maybe yourself, I don't know. I know I've jumped on a couple of podcasts and talked about this to try and get the word out and sort of just help shape our perspective and our voice, because I think that's the big thing that we're missing in mainstream media is that the consumers aren't really hearing our perspective. They think cafe owners are price gouging. They think cafe owners think roasters are price gouging when they're putting their prices up. And this education, like as a roaster, we've got to be communicating that for our industry. And we don't have, to my knowledge, we don't have industry advocates. Have I been thinking? I've been thinking about this for a little while, sorry. So it's just kind of opened the rant. I didn't know this was coming, but anyway. And so education, communication, it comes back to that. We've got to be talking to the consumers about it. We've got to find avenues. If you write blogs, start blogging about it, start talking about it. The more people that discuss it and the more perspective where we can actually help shape that conversation towards a positive is really, really beneficial, not just for us, for cafe owners particularly as well. And Caleb's absolutely right. The coffee industry, for whatever reason, the latte has become the scapegoat for the credit crunch. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's actually not fair. So anyway, anyone agree with me? I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyone else got something to add? That's my rant over for now.
No, I love it, mate. I think Ray's got something to add to that. Do you, mate?
I'm happy to let
Anyone else want to jump in?
Cool. All right, let me have it.
All right, so let me take my ICT hat off for a second, and I'll put my Coffee Commune hat on, because at the Coffee Commune, as Ben said, we do a lot of advocacy work for the hospitality industry. Phil gets on National 9 News, like he was on this morning, and on the radio all the time, talking about the difficulties in the industry and how government can support, and how we're lobbying government for different amounts of support. But we can't rely on that as the sole source of an answer. At some point, I think fundamentally, based on, this is not just my opinion, but based on data from 600 cafes that we've got on our membership around Queensland and Brisbane, that's going to be 3,500 at the end of this year with the awards coming up. Fundamentally, there's a pricing problem in cafes, and I think it's not been addressed well enough by cafes, and I think roasters can be part of the solution in educating cafes on how to price their product correctly. So fundamentally, if you run the numbers on the 600 cafes that we've got, the most profitable cup of coffee is the small coffee, the 6 ounce. One shot of coffee, the labor requirement, the input costs, everything. A cafe can be reasonably profitable on a 6 ounce cup of coffee. We're talking 35 to 40% profit. As soon as you go to a 12 ounce coffee, what's the price jump? In Queensland, it's 50 cents, maybe $1.
Yeah.
What should it be to maintain the same level of profitability? $1.50 to $2, correct? What about the next size up? In Queensland, 16 ounce is very popular. Melbourne, not so much. But Queensland, 16 ounce is massively popular. You know what the markup, what the percentage profitability is for a 16 ounce cup of coffee? Less than 17%. I wouldn't even get out of bed for that. So, I feel really strongly about this as well. I think cafes could theoretically discount, we're getting into consumer behavior, economics of consumer behavior, that sort of thing. if you listen to Rory Sutherland, he goes on massive rants about how you do pricing and how you position things. I highly recommend you get his books and look at some of the stuff that he does. It's amazing. But a cafe could actually be super profitable, even discounting slightly their 8-ounce or 6-ounce coffee. Push consumers to that as a cheap option. You could actually then maintain a below $5 or a $5 cup of coffee, but then up price the middle and the large sizes. Make those a little bit more expensive, because right now the value is too good. 50 cents up, I'm going to get the big one.
Yeah.
But it's costing the cafe a shitload of money. Whereas what their most profitable product is actually the 6 or the 8 ounce, and they're not selling enough of those. I'm just talking about Queensland specific because that's the data I've got.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, I think there is a pricing problem on coffee prices. And so your $3 coffee, Sean, is not terrible if it's a small coffee. But the big ones are probably the ones costing, the big ones are probably what's actually costing the cafe money and profitability.
One thing I'd like to say in summary of that is, as an industry, it's too easy for us to think that we're competing with the coffee roaster down the road or the cafe next door. Because for too long we've been competing with each other and going, oh, well, they're at $4, I'm going to go at $3.80. Or like, we're trying to compete with ourselves, which creates the race to the bottom. And it's opportunistic, but we don't have that luxury. It's another safety net that we don't have in our industry anymore with where the market's sitting and the things that we're having to incur those additional costs. Let's measure ourselves against wine. Let's measure ourselves against alcohols and understand where those costs are. There are differences, there are other things to understand, but we need the opportunity to take a mentality that we're working together. To finish it up, an interesting thing that I did earlier in the year,
I struggle with that.
Yeah, awesome.
Compare it to alcohol, compare it to wine, compare it to beer. It's fundamentally different. It's a different service venue, it's a different time, all of that sort of stuff.
Sure.
But compare yourself to another value-add product, compare yourself to a juice, a smoothie. How do we shift what we have as the industry as the intrinsic value of the product versus what the consumer sees as the perceived value of that product, and how do we start to align that?
Yeah. That's a great point. So the one thing that I'll take on that for sure is alcohol's taxes. The taxes of alcohol are different to the taxes of our industry. So I think that's even probably a more relatable spot to be giving to cafe owners is they have juices on the menu that are $10 for a juice. They have smoothies on the menu that are $10 for a smoothie. So like that's actually a much more grounded point that I would 100% agree with, to give them that reference that's in their bar, on their menu, that they do the work for. It's important to have those conversations, and this is the thing here, that we can split hairs on the fact that we need to identify something as a reference to talk about here, and to give something that we can talk to our customers, our cafes, and our customers as. If we have the opportunity and it works in our space to talk about alcohol, lean into it. This is the perfect environment for us to have these conversations, to take them away and take them back to our wholesale customers, take them back to our partners, and to keep this conversation going, that they're not feeling like it's their person selling them a product trying to tell them why they should charge more. That they're going, hey, I was at this industry event and everyone's talking about this, and we're moving these directions. And having people like Phil talking in the media and pushing those things. The one thing I was going to touch on to wrap it up is we talk about the market. So the base commodity price has increased by over 35% this year. What if a flat white went up by 35% this year? Using that as an example. So I created a piece of content earlier in the year that was just showing if the market in the last 12 months, if the price of a latte 12 months ago tracked with the market, how much would it cost? And that was a really good tool that roasters were able to share, because it wasn't them showing it. It was an independent third party dude talking on camera, but it was giving them a vehicle to go and start a conversation with their customers and go, hey, this is how much my costs have gone up this time. This is what it would look if you went up with it. Let's not do that, let's have a talk. So it's just giving them reference in their environment and finding those things like juices, like smoothies, like alcohol, other things that can give them a reference to understand where it sits. A cafe without coffee, is it a cafe? Is it a tea shop? Is it a bar? Like, this is a core product for all of us. A roaster without coffee, what are we? So we need to kind of drive back into that. Benny, you got something to add?
Yeah, I do. Just a question, more than anything. So, do we believe the Australian coffee industry is a world leader in coffee? Do we? I mean, I don't know. I do, but I'm not sure if everyone in the room does. Do we? Yeah. Melbourne, only Melbourne? Okay, Laura, we're in Melbourne. We're going to play home. We're going to play on home. Oh yeah, that's fine. It really shocked me when I looked into a little bit of the data on our Australian coffee industry and where we rank worldwide for a flat white or a cup of coffee, right? And we are not in the top 10 for what we charge. Does anyone want to have a guess at where we sit? currently? Within 2 or 3 spots. Anyone know?
29.
That's exactly right, 29th.
I know.
He knows, he's done it. 29th. Is that fair? It's not. And I think, you know, we, for too long, what Caleb was saying is we have been fighting against each other, competing against each other, when we really should be looking globally as well. And we have not done any favours to our consumers by keeping the cost as low as we have. That needs to change. Like when I travel, I'm not paying $3 for a cup of coffee. I'm not paying $4 for a cup of coffee. A lot of the time I'm paying 5, 6, sometimes 7, and it's not in AUD. I've got to then do the, you know, like the conversion, and that can hurt. But this is, you know, and you're paying for inferior products. I think if we want to maintain our spot in terms of being world leaders, people that are pushing specialty coffee industry, we need to be charging specialty coffee prices.
Can I share something?
Yeah, love that.
This is to your point, right? So I had a conversation with a very large customer today about the cost of coffee, right? And the way the conversation sometimes goes is, well, this is an open book model. You need to sharpen your pencil because coffee prices are going up and we can't wear that cost. Like, okay. So if you put your coffee up 10 cents a cup, do you think that would have an impact on your consumers coming in the door? Oh yeah, I think they'd come in less. I'm like, rubbish. What a load of crap.
Yeah.
What does 10 cents equal per kilo for you? But I had to do the maths for them. I'm like, that's $6 to $8 depending on your mix between. So I said, so hang on a minute, I've put your coffee up $2 or $3 a kilo because that's what it cost me. I'm not making any more money. You put your coffee up 10 cents a cup, your store owners just made $4 extra a kilo. So why are we having this discussion? And I think this is the really hard education piece, right? So I'm saying to them, well, specialty coffee's going up 20, 50 cents a cup. They're not mucking around. And if your roaster's not putting up your price, well, you've got another issue because they're probably not buying specialty anymore. But anyway, that'll be me going on a rant, so I won't go there.
That's fine. We're all ranting.
But, you know, this is the education piece where, and you're quite right, as an industry, we're not very good at sharing that 10 cents a cup is going to make sure you get the same quality coffee that you get every day without the roasters downgrading it. And it's no different to the milk discussion. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm just want to share this, I suppose, because this is a massive customer, and even they don't get it. So how do we explain it to an individual cafe owner and a consumer that 10 or 20 cents means you can still get what you got today? So,
Craig Dixon, President of Coffee.
Vote one?
No, I'd like to speak one as well.
Yeah,
Thanks, mate. I shared with Craig and the rest of the team yesterday, further to what Craig's conversation was. It's a chart that goes back to our good friend David Parnham back in 2017 or whatever it might be. Top things customers really want in a cafe. And what were the reasons why they were doing that? Number one, coffee taste and strength, 88%. Coffee quality, 87%. Convenient location, 84%. Pleasant ambience, 76%. Quick service, price at number 6.
Yeah, you're right.
It did not matter.
It is coming down to communication. The hard part is that we are a very fragmented industry. There's so many players, there's so many roasters, there's so many suppliers. To present a unified kind of message is a real challenge. I think an interesting thing that you touched on there was around, okay, it's only going to cost this much, like 10 cents a cup if we put it up. It's actually changing the mentality about how maybe a customer thinks about it. Some really interesting things you see from other commercial situations of charging for a product is if you charge 10 cents extra, how many customers can you afford to lose and still be making the same?
That's the old McDonald's.
Exactly. So
They will put their prices up and they will calculate.
they could afford to lose 70%.
5%, but I get 10% price increase and I'm making more money.
Exactly. So
And doing less. And having that discussion with cafe owners is hard.
100%.
But you have to do it.
Yeah, and it is challenging, and that I think we touched on the point there as well. Is it's low on the list. It's a conversation that needs to be had multiple times, and that makes it hard. And it's a conversation when these conversations are usually happening in a sales environment. So it's happening by someone who's trying to convert a sale, who's trying to close a deal, who's trying to keep a customer on, who's trying to re-sign a customer, and having to talk to them about why they should be paying more. It does create challenges, and when when the market was at a more kind of stable point, there was a risk that if you tried to have that conversation, someone would undercut you. And right now, if someone comes in and undercuts, they're going to be hurting and they're going to hit their line, and do they have the liquidity to survive it? So the information that needs to go to a cafe, hey, if you get it cheaper right now, how long can you get that, and what are they compromising on giving it to you? Are they compromising on your service? Are they compromising on the quality of your product? Because they're compromising on the price, so something else is going with it.
Yeah.
So it's a hard conversation to have, but it is a consistent conversation we have to have, and we have to band together around having it as well.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I'd take away from it, there's some good points about referencing other menu items on our bars. So as we're having these conversations, we can talk about green. We have to be aware of where the green market is moving, the volatility. We have to kind of have that communication. The big driver that we heard there tonight was relationships. Relationships are crucial. It sounds lovely and romantic, but it's the same as the relationship between you and your milk provider, the relationship between you and your coffee roaster as a cafe, the relationship between you and your supplier. Communication. It's all about communication. What do we need? When do we need it? Where are we up to? What's happening? Why is it happening? We need to communicate. But as Sean mentioned there as well, we need to communicate as an industry. So remember, when we leave this room, we're not fighting with the next person next to us to sell an extra bag of coffee here or an extra, cup of coffee to them. We need to unite and kind of show that reference there. So there are ways to do it. I'm going to pick Sean's here now because he's got all those roasters that I'm going to talk to as well. But it's the opportunity for us to kind of unite and show these things. Give comparisons of if the market moved with it. Where is the coffee price going? Just to give that reference of where they're at. But it's a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
2 words: be brave.
Be brave.
Be brave.
Be brave.
Like, have brave conversations.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to have awkward conversations with cafe owners. Don't be afraid to talk about what's going on. Be brave.
Yeah,
All right.
The big shift for us has been, let's understand this market isn't going backwards in a hurry.
100%.
So where you're at today, you're going to have to live with for a while. So get your head around it, get your business back to a profitable state and a sustainable position for today's market. Because it's not going to be 110 again.
Yeah, it's not going to turn around. Yeah.
Right? If we hit 200, we'll have a party.
Yeah.
But, build your business around where it is today, understand it's here to stay, and make that sustainable and profitable for you and your customers and the consumers.
100% agree. It's not changing. It's not, we're in this now and we have to plan for now and we have to be ready for that, and we have to be brave and have those conversations. We have to be brave and book those coffees. We have to be brave and plan and kind of move forward. So thanks to everyone on the panel. Big round of applause. Thanks to Sean. Thanks to the Bean Scout for putting it on. Enjoy the food and we